Here we are in the UI, and we're getting some errors on the deployment of create embedding 1 as an example. To troubleshoot this, and there's been multiple restarts, like quite a few, up to 7 now. If I click on it, I can go over to logs, and we'll see if we can get any additional information about it. The logs may take a second to load, but here we're going to see there is the could not import user function module, and sometimes this particular error could not import user function module is not, there's other reasons this could happen, but if we look closely, there's also an error, module StreamNative reg 1 has no attribute, create cohere embedding, and this is actually a misspelling. This is supposed to refer to the class name inside of the Python code that we're using, and inside of my Pulsar Cuddle create or functions create command, I used the incorrect path. So here in terminal is the example that I'd used to try and deploy create embedding 1. You can see here in the class name, I have create cohere embedding, and I don't have the correct spelling here, so it doesn't actually refer to any class inside of my StreamNative reg 1 zip file. Let me go ahead and delete this, and then I'll recreate it, and it should work fine. In our first example, our class was incorrect for our Pulsar function. Here I've redeployed create embedding. I've used 1B. Sometimes it makes it easier to troubleshoot if when you redeploy, use a slightly different name, because then you know that when you look at the logs, you'll only be looking at logs for this new deployment because the logs are parsed by name. I'm going to go over to logs here. We've up to 4 restarts here and we're in error. And it says here, could not find a version that satisfies the requirement Boto 3. This is actually a failure to install something from the requirements file. So it says down here, could not install user dependencies specified by the requirements.txt file. So the logs in this case are showing an error when it was trying to build out the dependencies. If I go ahead and look at my requirements file, you'll see that it in fact does request Boto 3. Yours does not. So I'll go ahead and fix that and use Boto 3 with the numeral instead of writing it out. And then this should deploy correctly since it will be able to download this. So that's a second example. So if you start creating your own Pulsar functions and having to add things into the requirements file, those types of errors you'll also be able to see using the logs. And here we have a third example. I've deployed create embedding 1C. It says running. Even after a few minutes, there's no errors here. But let me go ahead and publish a message to the input topic for this particular Pulsar function. After triggering the function using the REST API, I now have a user exception here. So there's something wrong with our actual Python code. You go ahead and click into this, go to exceptions, and it'll give some more detailed information. In this case, it's saying on line 31 of my Python code, the word string is not identified. So here in my Python code, on line 31, in fact, I do use the function or the method string. This is incorrect. It's to convert the unique ID to a string, you're supposed to use str. If I go ahead and fix that and redeploy, it should work fine. So the user exceptions will be a great way to troubleshoot actual code problems. One thing to note, since we did hit an exception here, we didn't actually return out of the function, which means that the message will never get acknowledged by default. So it will continue to be redelivered and will reprocess over and over. And there are different types of delivery guarantees or ways to handle exceptions with Pulsar functions, which we're not going to get into. But just be aware that if you leave a Pulsar function running, that is going to have a message that can't get fully processed to the return statement. So the message is going to continue to get redelivered and trigger the Pulsar function.